Good morning, members. Welcome to this meeting of the Lochaber committee. So, just to let everyone know, this this meeting has been recorded and will be available on the Highland Council's YouTube page. The chair's given us apologies for the meeting, so can I ask for a nomination for interim chair, please?
Happy to nominate Ben Thompson.
And second.
Okay, thank you, members. Okay, Ben, I'll hand over to yourself.
Great, thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Alan, Dennis. I was hoping to slide out the door there unnoticed. Okay, welcome everybody to this latest Lochaber Area Committee. First item on our agenda today is apologies for absence. Alistair's already noted the apologies of Andrew Baxter, the committee chair. Alistair, any other apologies?
Yeah, just from Councillor McLean.
Great, thank you very much. Members, second item on our agenda today is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest in today's agenda, please? Dennis, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Item 4, non-financial, as the Council's nominee to Lochaber Housing Association, but after consulting the Councillor's Code of Conduct will stay and take part. Item 9F only, to do with the housing needs assessment, the same Highland Council nominee to the Lochaber Housing Association, but for that particular item, item 9F, I will take no part in the discussion or the decision. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Dennis. Blair, do you want to come in with your declarations of interest, please?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I have a declaration of interest to make under agenda item 11. It's non-financial. I have family members that work for and volunteer for Lochaber Hope. I will remain in the meeting but take no part in the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Blair. I'm sure those have been noted. Great, thank you very much. Moving on to our first substantive item on the agenda, that's item 3. It's the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Local Committee Performance Report. And I believe we have Group Commander Mike Collier and Station Commander Colin Robb here to introduce the paper. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Colin. Thank you for attending our committee today. Mike, is it yourself who'll be speaking to the paper today?
It will, Chair. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Can I hand over to you then, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, Chair, Councillors, and many thanks for allowing me the opportunity to present the Scottish Fire and Rescue Committee report for Q2 of 21-22. In relation to the 6 key performance indicators, I would report the following. Accidental dwelling fires are 0 for the quarter and 6 year to date, significantly below the local and national average. There have been no fire casualties during this quarter, and this has now been the case for a significant period. The continued prevention, intervention and protection work carried out by SFRS and partners continues to support our communities in keeping them safe in their own homes. SFRS and partners will seek to engage and support these most vulnerable in our communities, linking together to provide positive outcomes. Deliberate fires are also 0 for Q2, and whilst there were several smaller wildfires within the area, these were accidental. There have been 2 deliberate fires year to date, and against the Highland statistics, this indicates that the Lochaber area has reduced socioeconomic issues by comparison to the wider geographical area from an SFRS perspective. Road traffic collisions are significantly lower than expected for the quarter and year to date, with an increase in staycation due to travel restrictions, etc. Only one of the incidents in Q2 involved release of casualties. All others were making safe or standing by to assist. With a reduction in tourism and opening of foreign travel, we would anticipate this would reduce the risk on our roads from the increase seen throughout the previous 12 months. Unwanted fire alarm signals sit well below the local and national average, and engagement with repeat offenders is attended to by our legislative team. SFRS have concluded a consultation on UFAS response, of which the preferred response model will be presented to the board in December for ratification. This is anticipated to reduce response and road risk to our personnel and the public. And finally, our station availability continues to be one of our most significant challenges. Reduced staffing numbers, retirements, resignation, changing social patterns. Fort William is the exception, and we have several individuals waiting to join the crew when vacancies arise. We have several individuals seeking to join across the committee area and in various stages of progression. We've also sought to strengthen our Strontian crewing model to support the Ardmurchan Peninsula during the period of increasing establishments at the outlying stations. Nationally, SFRS are seeking to deliver a robust, retained and volunteer duty system model from the moment of interview through to becoming an operational firefighter. It's anticipated development of this model will strengthen and support the RVDS model for many years to come and will result in a robust crewing model with less availability issues. That concludes my report for today. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, Station Commander Colin Robb or myself will seek to provide adequate response.
Great, thank you, Mike. It's very succinct but helpful commentary on the report. I have a question, but I'll just check whether my colleagues want to come in first. Dennis, you're first with your hand up. Would you like to put a question or comment, please?
Thank you, Chair. It's just a comment really, Mike. I notice under the all deliberate fires a significant reduction in, say, springtime, which is very welcome. Now, I know you and your force have worked hard in connection with issues to do with Muirburn. Just to say that I know this is not a struggle that is won in 1 year alone. If you could continue those good efforts, I think it would be hugely advantageous, particularly now with a sort of burgeoning environmental consciousness on the part of everybody. And I think there is a place for Muirburn, but it has to be properly managed and properly regulated. And I think if you could continue those good efforts which you put in the past, I very much welcome that. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Dennis. Mike, do you wish to respond to that comment?
No, I appreciate that, Dennis, very much so. We did identify last year that there was one particular sort of group of individuals with land that were having some burns, which we looked to seek and address. But yes, right across the Highland West, the sort of West Coast, we work very closely with our partners now, Forestry Commission, etc., and try and have that message of environmental concerns, which is very much at the focus now with COP26, and we endeavour to try and encourage them. The reality being, of course, that it is part of their heritage, and if it's done in a controlled and managed fashion, we would anticipate that we should see it levelling out and being a little bit more professional going forward, shall we say.
Thank you, Mike. My colleague Alan has his hand up. Alan, do you wish to come in?
Thanks very much, Ben. Yeah, thanks for your report again. And it is obviously a very good report for Lochaber, because we'll be dealing with later in the week across the Highlands, and unfortunately there are fatalities within that. But what my point this morning is more to do with the deliberate fires. Do you believe that the Rangers have played a big part in being able to keep down the number of deliberate fires, wildfires that may have taken place, especially in the summertime? Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. Mike, do you wish to come back in?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Alan, I believe that there are a number of facets which add to this, and certainly having Rangers engaging with members of the public, discussing barbecues, discussing the safe disposal, so on and so forth, does make a difference. We can only reach out so far. We try and engage with the landowners predominantly. In regards to that, we have some of our community safety advocates, we have some of the support watch commanders that we have in our areas. They'll go out and leaflet shops, they'll go out and to campsites and so on and so forth, and have those conversations as well. So there's quite a few strands to engaging. And as long as we continue that on a regular basis, I think we'll continue to see that sort of reduction, which will level out at some point. We'll never remove it completely. It'll never stop completely. Will always be the element of, but as long as we reduce the effect of these fires, that's the most important thing.
Great, thank you, Mike. I don't see any other members with hands up. The question I wanted to ask you was about the home fire safety visits and the legislation which comes into force in February around connected alarms. And I just wondered how you were dealing with that within your home fire safety visits, and whether there was any whether there was anything coming back from that in terms of public understanding, commercial operators in the market, etc., that would be either helpful for the public to know or be helpful for the council's own housing service to be aware of. Thank you.
I think I'm the person who to speak to about that, Ben.
Chair, I was actually going to say that. I was going to pass you across the Station Commander, Rob, because he's been working very closely with our community members in regards to that. We've had a lot of challenges with regards to that. So I'll pass you across the phone and we will update you on that one.
Yes, Ben, we have I've been doing a power of work to try and educate the community into this new legislation, which comes into being on February. I was actually live on Nevis Radio on the community hour on Friday, talking about, well, obviously being November the 5th of Tiding with Bonfire Night, and obviously the new legislation. I've spoken to the public at Lochaber Hope, and I have another open day at Lochaber Hope's new connections, which is a drop-in centre, and I will be giving a presentation and I'll have a question and answer session on the 10th of December. So I'll try and advertise that to the community at large. I'm aware that people are unsure about the legislation, so I'm there to reassure them and to give them the guidance that they require. So yes, I've been doing a power of work to ensure that the public know and the people of Lochaber know about that.
Great, thank you. Sorry, Mike, just to come in.
What I'd also say, Chair, if that's okay, is we have some guidance on our national website as well, the homepage that you go to when you go to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. It has guidance which is provided there in regards to that legislative change. And any of our teams within the legislative department are happy to have that discussion. We are finding challenges that people are wanting to have them put in as part of the home fire safety visit. However, we will reiterate that it's a risk weighting model, and unless that risk categorises you to have that, you will remain with a single point or make the choice yourself. You have to buy it yourself in the future from suppliers. Okay.
No, that's really helpful. Both appreciate your responses there. I don't see any other hands up questions from my colleagues. So thank you both for your for the report. Helpful as ever. It's really useful to have the update, and it's, as my colleague Alan said, a very, very good report. So thank you for that. Members were invited to comment on and scrutinise the area performance report. Are you satisfied we've done that today?
Great.
Thank you all.
Yep.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Colin. Once again, really appreciate your time in coming to speak to us. It's really helpful, and I'm sure the council will do what it can as well to spread that message about the fire alarm systems that you spoke about, Colin. So thank you both.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillors, have a good day now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, members. The next item on our agenda today is item 4. That's the Lochaber tenant satisfaction survey, and I think it's Mandy McClayman who's here to speak to that today. And just in time, I see, Mandy, your video has popped up on my screen. Welcome to the Lochaber Area Committee. If you'd like to introduce your report, please, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Good morning, good morning, councillors. And thank you for asking me along to go through this report with you. Every 3 years, we carry out a comprehensive satisfaction survey with all of our tenants. Now, the results for 2021 were substantially improved from the previous survey, which was in 2018. We have substantially increased satisfaction rates almost across the board. So I won't kind of go through line by line in the report, but you'll see the Highland-wide key findings. So 85.91% of tenants were very or fairly satisfied with the overall service provided by Highland Council's housing service. 92.51 said that Highland Council's housing service is very good or fairly good at keeping them informed. 93.81% of tenants said they were very or fairly satisfied with the opportunities to participate. This was the biggest increase across the board. The same question in 2018 had a 55.7% satisfaction rate. So Quality of home, 77.22% of tenants across Highland were very or fairly satisfied, and 88.01% of tenants were very or fairly satisfied with the housing services contribution to the management of their estates. So, when we're looking more specifically at Lochaber, the results were, some of the results were slightly below the Highland average, some were slightly above. So the first question regarding the overall service was 80% of Lochaber tenants were satisfied with the service, as opposed to 85.91 Highland-wide. The keeping tenants informed question, 88% of Lochaber tenants said we were good at keeping them informed, as opposed to 92% Highland-wide. The opportunities given to participate, again, Lochaber was very good in this one. It's 95%, which was actually higher than the Highland average at 93%. And overall satisfaction with the quality of the home was pretty much on the same as the Highland average at 77%. Overall satisfaction, again, was pretty much on the Highland average at 88%. And good value for money was slightly lower than the Highland average at 82%. We have been doing a lot of work in Lochaber recently. I'm sure you're aware that we have several active resident groups. We've got Upper Achontorg and Lochleven, Clagan, and the group in Plantation is just about to restart. We also have a new group that has set up in Lochyside. Brand new, they kind of adopted their constitution last week, so we're quite hopeful that they're going to do a lot of work down there. Sorry, I kind of got lost a little bit. Yeah, the new tenant survey is a different survey that we do. It's a survey we talk to tenants when they've about 3 months after they've moved into a property and just kind of assess their experience. Not just in Lochaber, but Highland-wide, we have found that there seems to be a relatively low understanding of the empty home standard. And this is, obvious in Lochaber as well. The scrutiny, we have a Highland Tenant Scrutiny panel, which has been carrying out a scrutiny exercise on the empty home standard and tenant satisfaction with it. We've just received their report, and we will be looking into that and looking into their recommendations to improve it. But what we're doing for now in Lochaber is we're ensuring that each viewing is an accompanied viewing, so that an officer can explain the empty home standard to people, especially regarding the decoration. There has been a bit of dissatisfaction with the standard of decoration, but that is clearly laid out in the empty home standard. But we are doing some work on that to ensure that every property meets the standard. Future engagement. We have already carried out rate replace surveys in a number of areas, and we're going to continue this over the winter. So this is mainly a telephone survey. It'll also be promoted through social media and through any other public meetings. This gives a holistic view of how residents feel about living in an area and what issues concern them, and will feed into future engagement activities. that is pretty much it. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thank you, thank you, Mandy. So I'm getting a bit of feedback on my mic at the moment. People to check they've got their mics off, please. So a couple of my colleagues got hands up. First, Councillor Henderson, and then Councillor Allen. Alan Henderson, do you wish to come in first, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mandy. Just out of interest, the new tenants, the survey and the disappointment that they're expressing there, does that include new tenants to absolutely new homes? And what is their disappointment? Is it in the decoration? You talked about the basic painting of it, or are they expecting other things to have happened, been provided in the houses? Is it something that you think the service could actually get round, or is it one of these sort of over expectations from new tenants? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. No, the new tenancy surveys do not include the new build properties. They are done separately. I think it's a combination of expectation, and most of these results have come over lockdown. So the majority of the viewings were not being accompanied at that time. People were just being given keys to go and look at a property. And I think that there was just a lack of understanding of what we can offer. Obviously there's a financial implication if we have to completely redecorate every home, which would have an impact on all tenants' rents. But as I said, the Scrutiny group have put forward a very comprehensive report on the empty home standard and ways that they feel tenants could be made more aware of it and get a better understanding so that satisfaction levels do increase.
Thank you, Mandy. I'll invite Blair in next, and then Dennis. Blair, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you to all those concerned for this report. I think it was really interesting to get a Lochaber perspective on the tenant satisfaction survey, which was considered by full council recently in a global Highland context. So it's really good to get the Lochaber perspective. And you draw some differences between in the report and your presentation, Mandy, about the overall Highland Council answers or responses and the Lochaber ones, and say in general they're slightly lower. I wouldn't be that worried about that. You could find out maybe a different survey with a different set of respondees, but that may change, and I think they're significantly enough close to each other for us not to be too concerned about that. But my query, as you'd expect, relates to the responses around quality of home, with the level of satisfaction both in Highland and Lochaber is much lower than the other areas of investigation. So we go from 80s and 90s to 77%. And I wonder why that is. I'd be interested in your observations on that. That's around quality of home. And my second point, Chair, is around the empty home standard. I'm really interested to see that the Tenant Scrutiny panel is involved with that. I'd be interested to see the outcome of officers' report. I think it's fair. It should be a reasonable expectation of all new tenants that they should have a good, clean, reasonably well decorated property when they are offered it. That would be my only observation around that, but that's great work. But I'd be interested to hear your views, Mandy, on the reasons why the levels of satisfaction around quality of home are as they are, not just in Lochaber but in Highland. Thank you.
Thanks, Blair. Mandy, do you wish to respond?
Thank you, Chair. regarding the quality of home, I think most of the dissatisfaction was with kind of capital programmes. You know, people felt that they were overdue for a new kitchen, new bathroom, new heating, etc. Obviously, over the past 18 months, we have really struggled with the capital programme. Because of the pandemic, work had to stop. And the capital programme is always challenging. We do put a lot of work into trying to make sure that the programme addresses the issues in each particular area. So it's an ongoing process. I don't know if Laki or Sandra want to add anything else to that.
Yeah, maybe just from me, just to say that I suppose the other issue for us as well is to ensure that where a decoration allowance is granted on a property, that is actually granted to the tenant. So from the outset, from the tenant signing up for the property, if there is a decoration allowance that should be allocated to that property, that is actually granted to the tenant. But Mandy's right about the capital programme. I think it's about delays in time to get capital works carried out in a property, and we have seen delays with the capital programme this year because of the COVID pandemic.
Okay, thank you both. Mandy, just to come back on any other points from Blair's questions?
Yes, the second point, I'm sorry, can you refresh my memory and ask again?
I think it was just a general observation around what a quality initiative it is to involve the tenant scrutiny panel in this empty home standard, and I'd be really interested to see what you do with the outcomes of that report as officers. Thank you.
Right, the preliminary report from the scrutiny group went to the housing management team meeting last week, and I presented the report on their behalf, and there was extended and in-depth discussion about the report at the meeting, and I think it was all very, very positive. The management team recognised that there were a lot of the recommendations in the report which made a lot of sense, and the next step is for an officer working group to take that forward and prepare an action plan and try and improve the customer experience throughout Highland.
Thank you, Mandy. I'll invite my colleague Dennis in now. You've had your hand up for a while, Dennis. Do you wish to come in?
Thanks, Chair. And in a way, it was very similar to Councillor Allen's question. So Mandy and Sandra, I don't expect you just to repeat your answers again. It's just that I was curious. 13% of the tenants in Lochaber mentioned dissatisfaction, and I was just curious, are there any common themes in that, as in it's all to do with kitchens, or it's all to do with bathrooms, or exterior decoration, or front doors, or whatever? And that was the only thing I was curious about, but I do appreciate you've largely answered my question in your answer to Blair's. Many thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Dennis. Mandy or Sandra, do you wish to add anything to the question Dennis is putting there about what's behind the negative numbers? Thank you.
Yeah, just to add in there, Councillor Rickson, that's part of the work that the working group will pick up on, to drill down in a bit more detail to what the dissatisfaction is and to find solutions to that.
Great, thank you, Sandra. For my part, I've got one question, which is about the second last data item, the satisfaction level with the housing services contribution to the management of the neighbourhood, which, you know, it's a huge improvement on the previous survey 3 years ago. It's very much to be welcomed. 88% of Lochaber tenants say they're satisfied with the council's contribution to the management of the neighbourhood they live in. I just wondered if you were able to say whether that increase is more attributable to how the survey's been done, or whether we can actually point to any particular environmental improvements or projects that the council's undertaking in Lochaber for the positive response, please. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Thompson. I think I can answer that. It's certainly a combination of tenant engagement, improved tenant engagement through our residents groups, who are really invaluable in feeding in information about what their priorities are in terms of environmental improvements on their estates that they live in. And that's vital for informing what we actually focus the spend from the environmental improvement budget on. And a lot of work from Mandy's team around tenant priorities. So certainly the Rate Your Estate initiative, Rate Your Place initiative. We've just undertaken quite a significant review of garages and garage sites across Lochaber. So that will be another piece of work that hopefully will roll out within the next few years that will improve estates as well. And that again comes from information we're receiving from tenants through tenants groups.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sandra. That does tally with the feedback I've had from residents. I can think of one project in Cool that Gus Laurie took forward that's been really popular and commented on. Which is a bit of pathwork to the bus stop, widely welcomed by some of the more frail residents. So that really fits well with what you've just said. So thank you for that. I don't see any other hands up for questions or comments. Oh, Mandy, do you wish to come back in, please?
Yes, thanks, Chair. One thing that I didn't mention was regarding the information that goes out to tenants and customers. We have agreed to do a pilot of, we do a tenant-wide newsletter, a Highland-wide newsletter. But the feedback we were getting from tenants in Lochaber was that they actually wanted some more area-specific information. So we're going to trial a very kind of, but a short newsletter, only for Lochaber tenants, giving them information about what's happening in Lochaber, about capital projects, tenant engagement activities, and any other news that we have that specifically affects them.
Yeah, thank you, Mandy. I'm glad you highlighted that because I picked out that from the report, and I think that's a really good idea, actually. I think that would be a really positive step forward, and I trust my colleagues would welcome that as well. I don't see any other hands up. So members, turning to the recommendations, we're asked to note the results of the tenant satisfaction survey for Lochaber. Are you content that we have done that today?
Content.
Content.
Great, thank you all. So thank you, Mandy, Sandra and Laki for your attendance today, much appreciated. And on a personal note, can I say thank you very much for your help over the past 7 years. I've been a councillor. Hopefully I'll see you around at some point. Probably not in this forum though. So thank you again for your attendance today. Great. Members, the next item on our agenda is item 5. That is the Lochaber High School Associated School Group overview. And we have Dawn Essen, the Area Manager, here to introduce the paper. Welcome, Dawn. Dawn, are you prepared to speak to the paper just now? Can I hand over to you, please?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, Chair and members. Okay, today I'll be introducing the Lochaber High School Associated School Group overview, and members will understand that this is the template to be using for a number of years regarding sharing the overview of the Associated Schools Group. On page 10, you've got the kind of background, and that includes the school roll numbers just now. The total in the primary, 979 pupils, and in Lochaber High School, there's 892. Members are pointing in the direction of the details regarding the ESG role projections, which are in the link below and readily available to look at. There may be questions around role projections, and I'll get the questions from members later regarding that matter. On page 11, we've got the normal template, which gives us information regarding the links to the school websites. And further down, we've got the details of the Education Scotland reports. And as members will realise, there's been a freeze on HMI inspections over the last 18 months or so due to COVID. So the last inspection that we've had in the Lochaber ESG was the very successful inspection at Coole Primary School in March 2020. Okay. Care Inspectorate, the details are in a similar light, although Care Inspectorate were doing COVID inspections over the last 18 months or so, but their members can see the details regarding the inspections, most of which were in 2018-19. We had the most recent one was Stramash Outdoor Nursery in August 2021, which was a very successful inspection with very goods across the board. Other school information, we've got the details regarding eco schools, travel plans and such, and members can see the information there. There's also at the bottom of the page the staffing update with the full-time equivalent of teaching and non-teaching staff in each of our schools. And following on from that, there are the further details of the nursery full-time and teaching equivalent in the nursery school, in the nurseries and early learning centres in the ESG. After that, we've got the update on ASN, teacher and PSA allocation in the ESG. And we can see there from the details that we've got 8.25 full-time equivalent ASN teachers, and we've got 67.56 full-time equivalent PSAs within the ESG. We've also got the details to share with members regarding the level of need across the ESG, and we can see there the pupils with level 2, 3 and 4 needs across the ESG. Further to that, we've got the details for members to look at regarding funding of each school and the cost per pupil as per the normal format. And as we move on to page 14, we've got the details, the most recent details regarding buildings in terms of suitability and conditions, and also school roll capacity. And members will be aware that we've got the current extension to Boonscoil Gaelic Lochaber, and we're hoping that that will be handed over to the school this week, and we'll have the 2 additional classrooms there, so that's very positive news. In terms of pupil destinations, members will be aware that the pupil destinations, positive destinations data changes from year to year depending on the cohort. And there you can see Lochaber High School, 1920 details, 92.55% into positive destinations, which was very much in line with the Highland average. But from year to year, these figures change depending on the specific cohort. When we move on to page 15, we can see there the specific details of Lochaber High School in comparison with Highland and Scotland in terms of destinations. And you can see that for session 1920, we've got 26.57 going on to higher education and 37.76 going on to further education, which in both cases is higher than the Highland Council average. Also, we can see that employment in the schools in Highland, especially the schools in the West and the Northern Highland, tend to have higher percentage of youngsters heading off to employment, and that's quite often related to such things as travel and tourism. And you can see there the figures of 30.77%, 1920 going into employment. And again, you can see that it's way above the Highland average, and obviously way above the national average. The data regarding positive destinations, again, varies from year to year with specific cohorts as we move forward. Okay, thank you, members. Then we're moving on to looking at the pupil attendance and absence and exclusion details across Highland and Scotland and across our primary and secondary schools. So you can see the data there regarding attendance, absences, unauthorised absences, and exclusion details. On page 16, we move on to looking at pupils and details such as looked after children and youngsters with the EAL. And again, we can see the information there regarding that. And when the information is below 5, then we don't normally share that information because of specific details of potential identification of individual children. But again, we can see the information there, and again for Lochaber High School. So members, that's an overview using the normal template for ESGs, and I'll hand back to the chair for any questions.
Great, thank you, Don, for that comprehensive report, very informative. The first member with their hand up to speak is Councillor Henderson. Alan, do you wish to come in, please?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Don, for that. Yeah, always a lot of interesting stuff in this one, where it is a particularly big ESG. I presume, just a couple of wee points, I presume that the 105%, and I never like over 100%, I never know what that means, but I presume that with the Boonscott, that's before the 2 classrooms get added. I hope that's good, that's great. Now, the other one that gives me a wee bit of concern is St Columba's, and we're obviously looking at the percentage occupancy back in 2020, which I think shows up 42.67%. But looking at the school roll figures and knowing the size of that school, I suspect that has dropped dramatically, so we're not actually seeing the full picture there. Is there a danger that that school will end up closing itself with the numbers dropping so dramatically, because it seemed to be down to just handfuls in each classroom, which is there a particular reason behind that, the fact we haven't been able to appoint to a head or anything like that, or any reasons that you know that's behind that trend there? Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Councillor Henderson. Yes, in terms of Boonscott Gaelic, Lochaber, obviously the extension to the school will absorb, and we'll have revised figures accordingly regarding capacity within the school. In terms of St Columba's Roman Catholic Primary School, members will be aware that the head teacher post has been advertised and re-advertised on a number of occasions at the end of session 2019-20 and in session earlier in the session 2021 as well. What we've got is we're moving forward with that, and we're going to be advertising the substantive head teacher post after the Christmas holidays. We've got an acting head teacher in post. We know that I think there's been obviously uncertainties since the resignation of the substantive head teacher, and due to a combination of circumstances, obviously these uncertainties have led to uncertainties with parents, and in some cases there's been movement to other schools. We're hoping that as we move forward, then we'll have a substantive head teacher, and there'll be a degree of consistency and continuity which will reassure parents as we move forward. The difficulty we've got when a school does lose youngsters is that we've got very small composite classes, which leads to limited choice and limited number of peers for the children, which in turn, in some cases, has led to parents deciding to move to the larger schools, so they've got a peer group. So there's a number of different factors behind the current situation. We'll hope that once we get a degree of stability and a substantive head teacher in post, that we can move forward regarding that.
Great, thank you, Don. Dennis, do you wish to come in? You have your hand up next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Don, for the report. I've got a couple of sort of observations stroke queries, Don, if I may. Working through them, the first one is on page 14 rather, sorry, where we're talking about school conditioned. Now, underneath the condition column, we've got C, which we've got 2 classed as C, one of which is Bannerby Primary, the other which is Inverlochy Primary. Am I right in thinking that C is the equivalent to poor, as in the Scottish Government School Conditions Survey report, which I think came out in September? The reason that I ask is that obviously the business of building new schools is a very fraught issue. We're just putting forward a plan to build 5 more at the cost of some 60 odd million. And we have a very substantial number of schools which are in poor condition throughout Highland, simply because of the number of schools we have. And it's obviously a huge factor going forward deciding how we can replace these if we're doing it by ourselves. So that's one question, please. The second one was on page 15. You quite rightly drew attention to the fact that Lochaber High School's 1920 figures for children going on to higher education is above the Highland average. And you're absolutely right to point that out. But I noticed that both the Highland average and our average is significantly lower than the Scottish average on that point. And I'm just wondering if this is something to do with the difficulties which children from remote locations have at attending universities, which are very often in the central belt or the bigger cities. I'd just be curious to know if there's been any research done on this one. We do actually have higher figures for going on to further education, and it may be that those opportunities are more available locally. The final one is really to do with this very specific one on page 16, which is to do with the uptake of free school meals. Now, I'm concerned about the figures for Inverlochy Primary, which are below half in P4 to 7 and just above half in P1 to 3. Now, in some schools, we actually are achieving 100% uptake. And to have below half in another school just sort of worries me slightly. At the end of the day, if you're classified in need of school meals, I'd love to think you were actually able to take them and eat them and get the benefit from them. And if you could shed any further light on that, I'd be very grateful. Thanks very much, Chair.
Great, thank you, Dennis. Just before I invite Dawn back in, can I just, in terms of referring to information in the report, anyone watching this as a member of the public will not have the page numbers. And just so that, Dawn, I know we all have copies of the report with page numbers, but no member of the public or a journalist will not have page numbers. So if you refer to information after a page number, people will struggle to find it. So just if you're, Dawn, if you're responding to some of the data questions that Dennis has asked, if you could refer to the section, please. The publicly available documents don't have the same page numbers on that ours do. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Rickson. Yes, in terms of the details, we know that the categorisation of properties is as per the national guidelines regarding that. And apart from, as Councillor Rickson has identified, apart from Banavie and Inverlochy, the quality in terms of conditions and such is very high, and obviously part of that's due to the new estate within Highland, within Lochaber area. We do know that Banavie and Inverlochy are two of the schools which do require a degree of upgrade as part of that, and hopefully as part of the estates and properties review of the current buildings and the fabric and fashion within that things will be moving forward regarding that. But this time I don't have any further information to share with members regarding that, but we know locally, and we know that properties and estates know locally regarding the conditions of both schools, and hopefully we'll move forward with that in due course. In terms of looking at the data for positive destinations, I think that Councillor Rickson's raised a very interesting point there. In terms of further and higher education, the data fluctuates, as I've said, from year to year. I think we've had huge developments over the last number of years, in particular locally with West Highland College and the provision there, and that has definitely benefited the Lochaber area and the West area in general, all the developments with West Highland College, which are to be very much supported, and we very much appreciate all the work of West Highland College regarding that. In terms of positive destinations within Highland, these change and move differently from different areas, and even within schools like Lochaber High School can change from year to year dependent on cohorts. What we do find, however, is that in certain areas in the Highlands, that the details regarding further and higher education not only fluctuate but are impacted upon by local employment. And we know that in areas like Lochaber, we've got a disproportionate number of youngsters who may go on to employment. Some of these terms of employment may be seasonal employment due to areas like travel and tourism, but these things change from year to year. I'm not aware of specific research regarding that, but we know that quite often in Highland we do tend to have a higher figure for employment than a lot of other areas, but this has parallels with some of the more rural areas where travel and tourism obviously impact, but it does change from year to year. But I would like to commend West Highland College for all their help and support in UHI around that over the last number of years, and for Fiona Grant and Lydia Romer and all her team for support around that. In terms of looking at free school meal entitlement, schools encourage and support the uptake of free school meals. Sometimes there's challenges around that, but schools continue to share the information with the parents, and sometimes there isn't uptake regarding that. But hopefully as we move forward, we'll overcome some of the difficulties around that. And we know that obviously the extension of free school meals is to be very much commended in the national level, and we'd hope that as we move forward we'll have a greater uptake in the areas which Councillor Rickson has highlighted.
Great, thank you, Don, for that comprehensive response there. I saw Dennis nodding along. He's happy with the responses that you gave there. I don't see any other members with hands up. I have some questions I want to put to you. So just turning to the points I wanted to raise with you. One was, we're obviously, I think, all very conscious of the difficulties of recruitment to teaching posts, and including PSA posts across Lochaber. But before us, we're talking about the Lochaber, the high school ASG. I just wondered if you would perhaps give us some more information on, in terms of the staffing, where gaps appear in the full complement being achieved across schools, what the council is setting out to recruit to posts, particularly for pupil support assistants, and what issues, where recruitment is difficult or staff are leaving, what issues are predominantly coming up in terms of why roles aren't being filled or people are leaving, whether it's the working environment, the pay rate, etc. Depending on the answer to that final point, I'll probably have a follow-up question after that, just about some of the information in the report. So yeah, if you're able to give us some extra colour there, Don, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members will be aware that we had extreme challenges last term going into this term in Lochaber High School with the recruitment and retention of ASN teachers, and also in terms of PSAs. We know that in terms of locally and nationally, there are huge recruitment challenges at present. A lot of this has implications with COVID and the lack of people available for that, and concerns and anxieties around that. But there are local and national staff shortages in teaching, in the SN teachers, and in terms of PSAs. There's also, added to that, lack of local supply cover and related issues which have been compounded by recent rise in COVID cases and related concerns. So there's a multi-layered approach in the sense of issues behind recruitment and retention. We know that the workforce planning team have been looking at this in detail and trying to move forward, and we know that there's been changes to the processes, and there's a continual review of the processes which are taking place, and we are moving forward. But we know that these are challenging times in terms of COVID and the pandemic, and members will know that locally within Lochaber over the last few weeks there has been quite a rise in the number of COVID cases across schools, and this has led to a number of staff within schools having to self-isolate, which in turn has led to a limited number of supply teachers and PSAs to be available at this time. So there's a number of different factors there impacting on the supply of people, both in terms of supply cover, but also in terms of people willing to go into areas such as PSAs. Hopefully, as we move forward and we overcome the current situation and some of the current anxieties and concerns, which are obviously compounded just now with COVID, we can move forward and posts will continue to be advertised and will be continued to be filled. But just now it is a challenging situation in Lochaber, but also across other areas as well.
Thank you, Don. That's very helpful colour there on some of the issues that are appearing, particularly around Lochaber High School, but also within the ASG. The follow-up question I wanted to ask was just around about, there's a couple of aspects to this, and that was the pay rates for nursery staff. So nursery staff and PSAs generally. Specifically what the pay rate was in terms of the national living wage and the real living wage, how close to that. And I specifically wanted to ask that question about how the funding for Stramash is worked out. I'm quite conscious that we have the funding information here on every nursery except for Stramash. As you rightly pointed out, they've had a fantastic inspection result, very good across the board, and ought to be strongly commended for that. I know they set out to be a real living wage employer. It would be helpful to see, or to, if you have that information at your fingertips, how that success they've achieved compares in terms of the cost per pupil that they are funded to. It is noticeable that information isn't on the report. I think it would be helpful to know that, and it would also be helpful to know that if they are able to achieve it with stable staffing and pay the real living wage, whether that then is an issue at other nurseries. I think the comparison would be very, very helpful. Perhaps, Don, you might be able to circulate that information after the meeting if you don't have it to hand, because I'm quite conscious that we only see this paper perhaps every 3 years or so, or 4 years, as we go around all of Lochaber, the various high school ASGs. So I expect the next report of this type, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it won't be, it'll be councillors well into the next session who see it. It might be 3 or 4 years down the road until we see a successor report. So if you're able to circulate that information about the funding for third-party nursery providers, particularly Stramash, that would be really helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the first question there regarding pay rates, I would have to refer to the workforce planning team to get the details regarding that and get back to you regarding that, Chair. I don't have the details at my fingertips regarding that. And in terms of Stramash and the funding and cost per pupil, again, I would be linking with the early years team to get that information to be shared with members thereafter.
Great, thank you very much, Don. Appreciate that. I realised that was quite a specific question. I'm quite happy that you're able to share the information after the meeting. Thank you for that. Colleagues, are there any other questions on the report before us? I don't see any other hands up. Okay. That being the case, members, turning to the recommendations, we're asked to scrutinise and note the content of the report. Are you happy that we've done that today?
Yes.
Happy.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Don. And I just on a personal note, can I say thank you very much for your not only your report today, but all the help and advice and guidance you've offered me over the past 7 years. Wish you all the best for in looking after the pupils and teachers within Lochaber. I think you do an excellent job of it, and I hope our paths will cross in the future.
Thank you very much, Chair. And on a personal note, I'd like to thank you so much for all your help and support over the last 6-7 years as well, Chair, and for a strong working relationship we've got with yourself and with other local members, and to wish you every success in your new challenges.
Great, thank you, Don. That's much appreciated. Members, it's 11:34. Can I suggest we have a 5-minute comfort break? That'd be suitable. Just enough time to brew a cup of tea or something. I see a thumbs up from Alan. Alistair, is it okay? Can we pause the webcast and can we reconvene at 11? Should we say 9 minutes? 11:45. That'd be okay.
Sure, Chair. Yep.
Great, thank you very much. So we'll reconvene at 11:45. Thank you very much. Take a wee comfort break. Members, the next item on our agenda is item 6. That is the Area Roads Programme for 2021-22 update. And we have Richard Porteous here today to speak to the report and tell us about all the money he spent in Ward 21. Richard, over to you. Are you able to talk to your report, please? Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman. Thank you. Yes, and members, Ward Manager. So this is the update report for the Area Roads Programme 2021-22, which was agreed at committee on the 19th of April. So at that time we had knowledge of our budget, which was about 1.2 million capital budget. So we've spent or committed over $1 million of that to date at the end of October. Since then, at committee, the Highland Council on the 24th of June, as part of the Highlands Roads Recovery, we were allocated some additional funds as part of the Health and Prosperity Strategy of the Highland Council, and that was a total figure of 9 million across the Highlands, and it was allocated in various ways. 6.5 million of that went to areas, and the Lochaber breakdown was about 300,000 for roads. There was also an allocation for structures of about 500,000, which structures will be reported separately, managed and reported separately. Excuse me. Also, as part of that 9 million, were 6.5 million, as I said, was allocated to area roads, and the Lochaber amount was 300,000. But the other 2.5 million was for specialist plant, of which we're very grateful also. And there are some machines that have been purchased. We've already received a larger hot box, which we're very grateful for, come in very handy for hot tar patching and surfacing. But there's also a Pothole Pro as well that has been bought, which is one of the new specialist pieces of plant for hot tar pothole repairs, for which we're also very grateful, and we'll be aiming to maximise the use of that piece of kit. So the report is relatively brief in itself. It also reminds members how we allocate our area allocation capital money. But it also, and it explains about this additional money. And then in section 7, additional capital funding for strategic roads, it explains how since Lochaber committee in April, there was an additional allocation of capital for strategic roads. And that went to, on the 5th of May, that went to the Environment and Infrastructure Committee. There was an update on that. And Lochaber allocation, well, it's not it wasn't allocated using the formulaic method. It was allocated based on the results of the road monitoring testing, and Lochaber had a significant number that came up within that, so we did receive significant allocation, and we've already addressed some of those as you know. So that was approximately another 300,000 for Lochaber this year, and the same again next year, the way it's working out. And it was the A884 that we spent some money on this year, and that was on the sections around Liddesdale, Tornish, and the approaches to Highland. And these were discussed as well back at our area committee back in April. So all this extra capital money has been very welcome. The original amount that we discussed in April, roughly 1.2 million, is roughly double what we had been receiving in previous years. And then with the additional strategic money and the area share of the 6.5 million that was reported in September, it's almost trebled, in fact. So again, very, very welcome. It has brought its challenges in terms of spending the additional money, and that's something we must do. So we're delighted that we've managed to achieve what we have this year, from a virtual standing start, if you like. We've had limited additional officer resource to assist us with that, and we've had other challenges along the way, such as all the visitor infrastructure improvements and project work associated with that as well. So I'm quite proud that the team has achieved what it has achieved this year. The other challenges we've had to contend with have been contractor availability. There's been other monies around in the public domain, particularly trunk road spending on surfacing. So we've had to be proactive, engage early with contractors to agree suitable slots when our own work can be accommodated. And in terms of, obviously, the DLO have delivered a significant amount of our programme in terms of surface dressing and road recycling, particularly, as well as patching. And we've had vacancies to deal with. Obviously, it's a national news, the driver shortage, and that has also affected us as well. So we continue to well, first of all, I'll just refer you to Appendix 1, which lists in simple terms what we have completed and what is planned and imminent, and what is outstanding of the works we set out to achieve in April. Of the most significant that we have not yet completed is probably the A861 Mingery sections, and that is something we're hoping still to achieve this financial year. Also, surfacing of the section of Torlundy Road prior to that being unadopted, which was agreed at previous committee, and the passing place sign replacement work in Glenethiv, that is it's listed as ongoing in Appendix 1, and that is due to be completed in the next couple of months. Started and completed in the next couple of months. Before I invite questions, the other points I was going to make were that as a service, we are committed, as I said, to maximising the spend of our additional money. Most of our additional monies have been granted over a 2-year period. However, from a budgetary point of view and a planning and delivery point of view, we're managing that on an annual basis and trying to maximise the spend annually to achieve the overall spend. And as a group, as a service management team, it's obviously our major focus. That strategy and putting in whatever we need to try and make sure that we deliver on that. So we're looking at our staffing structure as much as anything at the moment. Yeah, so for next year, one of our strategic aims again is the A884, but we also have significant issues that we've been discussing with yourselves and with communities around other roads such as the B849 Drimnin Road and the A861 Ardgour to Drumsally, and of course B8008, where we have the visitor infrastructure issues, and we continue to work with all partners and stakeholders on that one too. So that's everything really I wanted to say. Hopefully the report speaks for itself, but be delighted for questions. And the one last thing perhaps before I finish is just to remind that next year's programme the intention would be for that to go to the January committee. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you, Richard. Colleagues, do you have a question for? Colleagues, do you have questions for Richard on his paper or comments? Blair, do you want to come in first, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for that report, Richard. I note, however, I'm not sure if I'm getting confused, but I didn't see on Appendix 1 any reference to Grange Terrace. Now, is that some other programme or planned piece of work? Perhaps you could explain that to me. Thanks.
Richard, do you want to come back on that question before I go?
Yeah, no problem, Chair, Councillor Allen. Yes, for simplicity, I deliberately left the appendix as it appeared when we went to committee in April, so that I could add in the final column on with remarks there on completion, imminent plan, etc. Grange Terrace obviously came up at committee, and we gave that commitment to take on that scheme as well. So I can confirm that that is the case, and significant work has been done now in terms of design, because rather than a simple resurface, it proved to be one of the reasons it hadn't been done to date is because of significant improvements required in terms of the footway alignment and the drainage there. So that's now been designed, and it obviously amounts to a significant figure rather than just the surfacing. So we have committed to undertaking that as soon as we possibly can, weather permitting at this time of year, but that's not an excuse, that's just the reality. So we will undertake that scheme as soon as we can. And we may, well, it'll be done in, obviously there's elements to it, there's the improvements to the drainage and the footways, and then the surfacing will take place, and so it will be naturally phased in terms of the works, but that again is no reason for it to be delayed. It's just a question of getting it organised and getting the work done. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Richard. I'll go to other councillors for questions, and I'll come back to you, Blair, if you still want to come back in. Alan and then Dennis, do you want to come in with your questions or comments, please? Alan first.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks again, Richard. Yeah, and I'm glad that you said you had presented a brief document, because you did make us jump about a fair bit with all the links that were in it there. But I'm delighted that we also caused you a headache by giving you extra money from this administration, which really, yeah, it's been something we've all worked and needed to do and pay cognizance to our roads. There's no doubt about it that they were in a dreadful state. But I think we would have to be honest, there's been a fair improvement, certainly in our own ward. And you've done two very admirable projects that have been very well received, the Malik one and the Morer one. They're still part of Morer, which I'll remind you, but I think it pops somewhere into the thinking. For my sins, I end up going to a community council out with my own area there because of the issues that cross the two boundaries. And I constantly get in my ear the 861 because it's an A road. And I can say that because we don't have any A roads, so therefore we don't have an allocation within the Ward 11 budget. But the Vice Chair seems to constantly be on the case. In fact, I think I see an email to you this morning, which you've probably received as well. So it would be quite good if you could give a response there, at least to let them know. And I'm sure something will appear in the January edition that you're hoping to put out. But at least if you can give them the assurance that it's being considered there as well. With the money that you've got left, because obviously it is important that we show that we are able to spend the whole lot within the 1 year, are you still trying to bring in outside contractors? I see them very sort of fleet of foot when it comes to working with our partners, Bayer and Transport Scotland. You know, they fly in literally overnight to Kent, get the jobs done, and then sort of move on. They certainly seem to be able to do it. I don't seem to see so much of that within our own service, because obviously you've got the design and then you hope that the DLO will do it. Another specific question I have is, you mentioned about the infrastructure programs that have been done, probably more through the visitor management part, and the money's there. Can you remind me which ones we actually have completed in Lochaber? I know we've got a few on our radar, but it's just nice to know that we can actually point people to which ones have been completed. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Alan. Richard, do you want to respond to Alan's questions? A couple there for you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Henderson. Yeah, A861, I can, obviously I can't preempt the whole report in January, but yes, as I said earlier, the A861 Ardgow to Drumsally I will have to do response to that email, and we'll let members see that. And yes, that is the plan, that there's investment there as soon as possible. And in terms of the contractors, yeah, we as I said, I mentioned Torlundy Road and the other ones, where was it now? Mingery, that we're still trying to do this year. And when obviously we have the winter, conditions are more difficult for road works. As we come out of the winter, it can be a bit of a mad rush before the end of the financial year. But what we often do in order to try and attract contractors early is combine works at the end of this year and with the beginning of next financial year, so that they can run through March and April without them having to go away and come back again. So that's the type of thing we try to do to get the benefit there. And the last question was on visitor infrastructure improvement. Yes, there's been a lot of things talked about and a lot of things in the pipeline, but in terms of what we've actually done, it's harder to see on the ground. The passing places will be an obvious one in Glenetive. The double yellow lines, the seasonal parking restriction order was done up on the B8008, and the double yellows in Glen Nevis were done as well. We're continuing to work with Glen Nevis to rationalise the signs up there, and I believe there's some markings to be done on the road as well up the far end, the hash cross hatching to prevent the parking up the far end. We're still working, just talking to people about the Glencoe Ski Centre access road, although it is still talking at the moment. And obviously there's all sorts of ideas about improvements for parking infrastructure up at the possibilities still up on the B8008. Just trying to think if I've forgotten anywhere, but obviously Glenetive and Glen Nevis and the B8008 are the main focus in Lochaber. Hope that answers the question there. It is a work in progress and continues to be a focus, the visitor infrastructure improvement, and we're happy as ever to be working with all stakeholders anything to do with visitor infrastructure improvement. And I personally am on the council group. We have a trainee now in the office whose focus is in that area as well. So yeah, it's going to be one of our main focuses for a while to come.
Thank you, Richard. Dennis, you've had your hand up for a while. Can I invite you in now if you want to put questions or comments to Richard? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you, Richard, for your report. Can I just say a brief word about some of our most remote roads, if I may, Richard? As you know, the Chief Executive and a number of the Executive Chief Officers made a visit to Noidat recently, and I was in their company, and we were taken along one of our most remote roads. And I think there's nothing like being driven over a bridge which has got a question mark against it to concentrate the mind on the need for bridge support and bridge repairs. So if I could just mention that again, I know the eco-responsible has logged it, but I certainly think, you know, the issue of bridges, which I know you're tackling in Mora and in Noidat too, if I could draw your attention to that, and the condition of the road, and there's an issue about the junction at Era as well. On the issue of some of the local ones, I notice equally there's a small road to Malik Vague, which most people don't go up, but of course living here I do, and that I would say that some of our most remote roads have this issue, that perhaps they're a little bit out of sight, and that would be another one, if I may, I can draw your attention to. Like Councillor Henderson, I much appreciated the work that had been done in Malik and Mora to improve the road there. We do have quite a bit of degradation on the small offshoot that leads down to the chapel at Lochaber, and I think that could maybe merit a visit. On the issue of visitor management, I noticed you were at the visitor management workshop last week, and I appreciated your presence there, and you will have heard me talk about one of the concerns which I have, which is obstructions which are put on the side of the road by some local land managers and so on, and I am concerned about that. And whilst we're on the subject of the B8008, can I mention to you a concern which I have, which is about the edge of the road there, particularly right at the beach. In other words, there's so much usage, there's so many people parking there, that I think sort of access from the road to the beach is suffering from some erosion now. And I would just invite you to look at that in the particular context of the pressures that are on the B8008. However, thank you for all your work, and we unhesitatingly welcome whatever improvements you can make, Richard. Thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dennis. Richard, do you wish to respond to some of the specific items Dennis has raised there?
Yeah, just to note, confirm that I have a note of all of those items. Thank you for bringing them to our attention and reminding us about the remoter roads that we're responsible for.
Thank you, Richard. Blair, can I invite you back in? You still have your hand up just to come back on questions raised earlier. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Thank you for your response earlier, Richard. I do understand and fully appreciate that you've been keeping me informed separately about progress at Grange Terrace, and that work to start that is imminent, subject to appropriate weather conditions. However, what I can't square is is it not included in the budget of 1.237 million was originally agreed at the area committee, or is it accounted for in some other budget?
Thanks, Blair. Richard, do you want to respond?
No, I can confirm that it's included in our area capital budget. Yeah.
So I guess my query is still, why is it not listed in Appendix A if the total budget available is 1.237 million and £300,000 for Grange Terrace isn't included in that? What am I missing?
Not missing anything. Sorry, I could have added it in as an additional line, but there were contingencies in that original table. Rows 23, 24 and 25 are significant contingencies. So that was the reason for leaving it left it out just to keep things simple because it wasn't in the original table.
Thank you, Richard. I can see Blair is probably still wanting absolute certainty on this. Can I ask the question in another way? Since that 1.2 million was agreed on in April, you've had other funds come in to the capital budget. I know they're listed in section 4. Can you just tell us the total of those and how much of that extra money is going towards Grange Road? Thank you.
Well, maybe the simplest. Well, I will answer that. Sorry that it's not clear. So the latest estimate for Grange Terrace is £300,000. So what I was saying earlier about, so we've got ample funds in the capital budget to pay for that, because the additional figure in section 4.9 there is £329,000. So that answers the question. There's sufficient funds to cover that this financial year.
I see a thumbs up from Blair, Richard. So I think he's content that the money's there to get that fixed. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I have a question myself, Richard, which is you referred to Torlundy Road and the unadoption of that, disadoption of it. I suspect you're talking about the old Lenacan County Road. I don't know if its official name is Torlundy Road. I think because there is obviously a Torlundy Road in Coole. So for the avoidance of any doubt, I presume you're talking about what's known as the Lenacan Old County Road. Can you just tell us who it is? I presume when it's unadopted, it will return to the landowner, who'd be the Forest and Land Scotland. Can you just tell us what work's going to be done on it, what condition it will be handed back to them, and what condition it will be maintained in by the landowner? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I don't have all the details to hand. It did come to committee in a report all of its own, so that detail will be there in the archive. It's the Torlundy Quarry Road at Fort William there. So yeah, so it's going to be, there's a section that's going to be resurfaced with an overlay, and that will bring it up to well-maintained condition, and it will then revert to the existing landowner who's content to accept it in that condition. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Richard. That's a different road. I know which one you're talking about. I know the report you're talking about now. No, that's clear in my mind now. It's not what's known as the Old County Road. It's the Quarry Road. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, members. I don't see any other any hands up to come in on this item. So turning to the recommendations before us, we're asked to note the progress achieved with the prioritised 21-22 roads programme for Lochaber area. Are you content we've noted the progress achieved?
Content.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you all very much. And thank you, Richard, for your responses to your questions today. Good luck in the future with looking after our roads for us. Thank you very much. Okay, members, moving on to the next item on our agenda is item 7. That is the proposed traffic calming at Lundavar Road, Fort William. And Lisa McKellar is here to talk to this item. Yes, Lisa, your video just popped off my screen very handily. Can I hand over to you now to introduce this item, please? Thank you very much.
By magic, yes. Thank you very much, members. You will see from the report that you have got that this one is to do with the implementation of speed cushions on Lundavar Road. We would like to put 3 sets of speed cushions in. Reason being the existing mean average speeds, which you will see in Appendix 2 of the report. Your speeds range from 23 miles an hour to 29 miles an hour. So the design guidance, as you'll know from previous discussions we've had with 20 limits in Fort William, dictate that if your mean average speeds are 24 miles an hour or below, then some form of traffic calming has to be put in place to allow the 20 mile an hour limit to go in, and in this case to be retained. So background in the report there, obviously there was previous temporary build outs went in on Lochaber Road as part of the Spaces for People programme. I think they were inherently unpopular locally, so have now come out. So this is the long-term proposal to allow this stretch of road to be included in the permanent 20-mile-an-hour limit. Will come on the back of this. We are proposing speed cushions. Due to the nature of the road, they will allow two-way traffic to be free-flowing. The buses, they won't impact the buses in any way. The 3 sets of them will mean that the speed will be maintained along the route. So as you'll see from the paper, this went out to public consultation. We actually had one person that came forward to say anything about it during that consultation period. You will see that objection letter in Appendix 4, and you will see the response that went to that person from the council officers. We haven't heard anything on the back of it, so in the interests of trying to move this scheme forward, we are coming to committee today to seek approval for the installation of these speed cushions.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I think it's a clear and comprehensive report. Members, do you have any questions or comments? Councillor Allen, you should come in first.
Yes, thank you, Lisa, for your report and for your summary of it. And the report to me has been very welcome. So I will support it when the time comes to express my views. However, I'm just going to express a wee bit of surprise about the average mean. Was it the mean average speeds?
Yes.
Going as high as 29? In my experience, even with the previous traffic calming measures there, it's a bit of a racetrack. So, I mean, I'd be interested to know what the outlying speeds were recorded. So it must have been appreciably higher than 30 or even 40 miles an hour. That's just a question of idle curiosity on my part. But yeah, yes, I'm certainly supportive of the report, particularly since following the consultation, there's been only one objection, and that seems to have been handled very well by officers. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Blair. I'll take Councillor Henderson in next, so at least you can respond to a few questions at once. Alan, do you wish to come in next on this item, please?
Thanks, Chair. Yep, I wasn't going to speak on that because it's not in my ward, but as I used to live very close to it, I fully agree with what Blair has said. Ever since even the 20-mile-an-hour signs went in down at the bottom, as people turn left, they seem to take off as if they're on a racetrack. It's absolutely weird. So anything that's done to try and have traffic calming measures on that road, and really, but when you see even the one letter that did come in, the person misses the point completely about it. Although it's maybe a main arterial route, it's serving nothing but side roads all the way up it there. And no, so absolutely fully in agreement with it there. Just glad that you're able to get on with it with minimum disruption from the public. Thanks.
Thanks. Alan, Lisa, do you want to respond to those two councillors' questions and comments? And I have a couple of questions for you as well. Thanks.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, Councillor Allen's point about speeds. I'm quite happy to share the full data for you, but you're absolutely right. In the road safety world, we used to work in 85th percentile speeds, which is sort of 85% of vehicles going over or under, and they're always higher, and we now work with the mean average. So to get mean average of your highest one there was 29. Clearly we need to implement, these measures to bring the speeds down. So we always find the speed of vehicles are higher going uphill than they are coming downhill, and I think that's one of the biggest differences we've seen, because obviously the same location coming downhill was 23 and going up was 29, so that's a big gap. So quite happy to share the entire speed data so you can peruse over a cup of tea.
Thank you.
I think I just welcome the support, obviously, from Councillor Henderson there as well. And you're absolutely right. There's a primary school right on that route, so it is part of the wider picture of the whole thing. So I sort of absolutely welcome them support to include it, as part of the wider picture.
Great, thank you, Lisa. My own, just a couple of quick comments. I fully support the recommendation. Echo Blair's comments on it. One of the points I wanted to highlight was when the trial first started, I had a discussion with our local police inspector about their ability to enforce 20-mile-an-hour limits and their desire to see them. I'm sure he won't mind me saying that he was very supportive of this particular road having a speed limit because of the history of accidents on it. Some of them quite, quite horrendous accidents. So, on that basis, I'm very, very strongly supportive of it. Couple of questions. Apology, I know the report before us is specifically about this road, but seeing as you're here today, I'm going to ask you about other areas of the Fort William rollout. And well, three questions really. First is, at what speed do you think the cushions like this ought to be put in place? The reason I'm asking is the B8004 in Banavie has had speed survey done on it, and I think the average speed was around about the 25-26 mile an hour limit. But I don't think there are any plans at the moment to put speed bumps in there. But certainly residents, while they appreciate the 20, would like to see the average come down further. Second question I wanted to ask, the one residential road that was left out of the implementation was Kilmally Road through Lochaber, and part of the reason for that was that the flood scheme was being built on part of it. The flood scheme is obviously well underway and will be coming to an end year after next. What plans are in place to put in the 20-mile-an-hour limit along the full length of Kilmally Road? That was a request of the Community Council. They were strongly in favour of it. Are there any plans to complete the 20-mile-an-hour on all Fort William residential streets? Because that's the one that's still outstanding, please. And then finally, what plans do you have to widen 20-mile-an-hour rollout to other residential areas of Lochaber? Because certainly the feedback I get is that other villages in Lochaber would like to see the same treatment. So 3 areas there of questions. Thank you very much.
I was going to say, you said 2. That was 3. So what we do when we're designing them and the traffic calming, so the guidance, it states that at 24 or below, we can do it signing and lining alone. Anything above that in terms of mean average speeds, we have to look at it to see what's appropriate. So we have to look at the road in terms of the nature of its use. So, for example, is it a thoroughfare for pedestrians? Is it appropriate for a raised table, or the vehicle flows high enough to put chicanes in? Buses, is it on a hill? So it's not a case of just saying the speed's this, we need that, that way. So everything needs to be looked at on its merits. Something sort of just above the 24, you could look at some cases. The relaxation of the guidance in 2016 allowed the use of speed indication device signs and roundels on the road to be actually classed as traffic calming, so they were never classed as that before it. So sort of just over that threshold, you can look at those sort of softer measures, if you like, and then do speeds again to see if they're bringing the levels down to an appropriate level to what you'd want to see within a 20 limit. So it's very much looking at sort of each, on its merits. And are they close to gateways, for example? Can you do like an enhanced gateway with dragon's teeth, that kind of thing? So it'd be very much looking at, that's particularly sort of one on its own merits to see what's appropriate and what's going on there. Kilmally Road, I think I put it in the paper, on the back of this one, we will be coming back to members to fully consult on everything. We've been asked to look at making, obviously, the Spaces for People schemes temporary, so it's in place for 18 months, and that runs out in the middle of next year. But the council have carried forward the Spaces for People funding to allow these temporary schemes to go permanent, and that funding has to get spent by the end of March. So we will be coming back incredibly shortly on the back of this to look to make the wider scheme permanent. So we'll take on board your comments about Kilmally Road. As you know, it wasn't included in the original one. We have actually now got speed data back for that, so I can send all that on. I think the bottom line with Kilmally Road is it'll need significant extensive traffic calming to bring it down to the right speed, or to be able to include it within the 20, because the speeds were just high. So, but that's a discussion, you know, that we will quite happily have, you know, with members to see what direction you would like to see that one going, based on guidance available to us in terms of designing schemes, etc. Wider rollout, you're the same as, you know, every other area of Highland. It is absolutely the direction of travel. Everybody's asking for schemes all over the place. So we've actually been asked to put on a members seminar on 20 mile an hour limits to look at what options are available for a sort of wider rollout of it. Because I think we were all, you know, wanting the Scottish Government to put it as part of their, you know, the new roads legislation that came out, and obviously it wasn't included in that. We have been in discussions with Transport Scotland, and they are updating their own guidance on it at the moment, so we're actively waiting to see what's going to come on the back of that. So our team are currently implementing about 10 across the area, including all the making the spaces for people ones permanent. So we've got a sort of expanded Safer Routes to School budget from the Scottish Government, so we're sort of doing it all as a winner. So including 20 mile an hour schemes, we're delivering about 70 odd projects under that this year. So but yeah, it's good to know that there is a wider, you know, want for them, as we say, and we're working very closely with members in the development of all of these, because ultimately if there's any objections to traffic calming, it's up to you guys, you know, as to what happens. So we very much are dealing, you know, working with members with all the schemes we're doing.
Great, thank you, Lisa. It's a very helpful response. Now, I understand the position you're in with a number of schemes, but it's good to hear such a lot of work is going on. No, thank you for the report. I don't see any other members wishing to speak on it. So turning to the recommendations, members, there are 5 recommendations before us. I won't read them out because they're fairly lengthy. They are as per our papers. Are you content to note and approve those as appropriate?
Agreed.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Thank you all very much, and thank you, Lisa, for a very clear and a clear report. Appreciate your time today very much.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you all.
Thank you.
See you.
Okay, members, the next item on our agenda is item 8. It is the use of Lochaber COVID response funds, and I think Senior Ward Manager Dot Ferguson is going to speak to this paper today. Dot, are you ready to talk to your paper, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. You'll be aware of the decisions made at Council at the beginning of January about ward members being able to repurpose the COVID funding that was made available. And this was initially for play areas, but broadened out that as long as there was an area committee approval in place, that the COVID money could be repurposed for any other use. Just looking through the report and skipping probably through to paragraph 4.1, as I said, agreed at the meeting in early January about repurposing the funding, and members have had discussions previously to this committee about the potential to repurpose the funds that are outstanding. A couple of specific projects have come forward, one from the Road to the Isles facility groups for toilet provision in Malik, and also for further spend on play areas within Ward 21 for William and Ardmurchan. Paragraph 5.1 sets out the available budget for these purposes. Both wards were awarded £36,000 for COVID purposes, and the spend to date for Ward 11 has been just over £21,000 and Ward 21 just short of £15,000. So the balances are set out there in paragraph 5.1. The proposals in front of you today are for, as I say, Road to the Isles Facilities Group. This is a very well-established not-for-profit group which has carried out a number of projects in the Malik, Morar, Araseg areas, and particularly in response to the volume of tourists visiting the areas and also motorhome provision. There was a substantial project developed by the group which unfortunately fell foul of the COVID outbreak, which has resulted in increased costs. The group has approached the council as to whether it would help meet some of the cost overrun, and the proposal is to award £13,500 to the Road to the Isles facility groups for this purpose. If that's approved, that would leave a balance of, which I've written down a second ago, sorry, a balance of £1,432, which would still be available then for groups bidding in for COVID money. With regard to Ward 21, and again recognising the really poor state of the play parks and the importance of play provision to children, particularly after the COVID outbreak, Ward 21 members have expressed a desire to spend around £20,000, which would be allocated to community services colleagues to support play equipment across the area, and that would leave a balance of £1,679. Both of those before you today, Chairman. Happy to take any questions. I would say that it is a significant amount of time since we have had any requests for COVID-related funding to either ward budget, hence being relatively comfortable in recommending this spend. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Give a summary of the paper there. Councillor Henderson, Alan, do you want to come in?
Relatively comfortably sounds like a ringing endorsement, so happy to agree.
Thank you, Alan. Dennis, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to say, happy to endorse what Alan has just said. I mean, the provision of public toilet facilities in Malik does have a COVID aspect to it, and I'm really grateful that we can do that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Dennis. Don't see any other members with a hand up. Blair, do you wish to comment on this spend in your ward at all? Are we just content to approve the recommendations?
Yeah, just very happy. Thanks for the report. Very happy. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. So members, the recommendations before us are 3-1 in our papers. I won't read them out, it's reasonably lengthy. Are you happy to approve and note as requested?
Agreed.
Agreed. Happy to agree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dot. So item 8 on our agenda covered. Members, item 9 is place-based investment funds, proposed funding allocation. I think Senior Ward Manager Dot is going to again talk to this paper. Dot, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members will be aware the Place-Based Investment Fund, this was arising from the budget that was agreed by Council in March 2021, where £100,000 Place-Based Investment Fund was allocated to each ward. Members have had various discussions in terms of the use of this funding, and the recommendations are set out, or the proposals are set out there. In terms of the detail of the various projects, if I can turn to section 4 and just a wee bit of detail on each of those. 4.1, cool play space. This has come forward from partners, particularly around the community planning table in terms of locality planning, and the provision of outside space is a priority for the group. This proposal has come through that grouping, and subject to the last sentence there at 4.1, the proposal is to award £35,000 for this community space, which would be exactly what it says, open space, which children, no booking required, no other elements on it, but purely for open space. And the money really would go in terms of making that site usable and make it safe. However, we do need that project plan to come forward about how it would be managed, maintained, but subject to that, the proposal is that we would support that project. 4.2, the play park provision. This is again Road to the Isles Facilities Group, who have been working to improve the play provision in the Malik area and have done a substantial amount of fundraising themselves already. They have raised £48,000, and it's considered that a further grant of £30,000 would complete this part of the project for them. However, what we would need to do is to make sure that quotes had been received for the work, but based on that, the recommendation there is to support that project to £30,000. 4.3, the Trishaw Project. Again, this is under the West Highland Wheelers banner, and the Trishaw Project, some people may be aware, which allows accompanied excursions on specially developed bikes for people who don't get out and about. And again, on the back of COVID particularly, this is seen as a really welcome development. There are similar projects across Scotland which have been very, very well received. These costs, they have been trying to get the funding together for this for some time, but the costs that are shown there are updated figures and should easily accommodate the provision for that project to get underway. 4.4, the housing needs assessment. Members will be aware that there is already a business sector assessment going on, which is trying to identify the issues around businesses being able to attract and retain staff while the housing demand is so high and provision quite limited for a number of factors. This funding would help to extend that work and make sure that it does cover the whole of Lochaber and also potentially any other sort of latent demand that's not clearly known at this stage. 4.5 is support for young carers. This is operating under the Connecting Carers charity, which is a Highland-based charity which supports unpaid carers. And there are two elements to this project, working with the local youth hubs to run awareness-raising activities and training, and that boosts the professionals' awareness of the young carers' needs. But also a second element there, which would be, that would be a value of 4,000. The second element to a value of 8,000, which is about short break activities, single day events and residential to help young carers in terms of resilience, team building, etc. Final element is around community planning. As members are aware, there's a high level of deprivation in the area, and the community and partners have been working together to develop a number of priority projects, but there is more work to be done there. There is an element of resilience around how that group is pulled together and work that's needed, both in terms of the running the locality planning element, but also projects within it. So the proposal is that £8,200 is granted for the works through the cool locality plan, and that is both for projects themselves, but also for facilitation role. So in terms of the management of the funds, just states any awards there which have not been given specifically to a named group within this report, which are over £10,000, will come back to a future Lochaber Area Committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Comprehensive report. Councillor Rickson. Dennis, do you want to come in first?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say a few words in support of some of the aspects of that report which has come forward. I think excellent report. Can I just say, pick out a few things, please? The cool space was brought forward by High Life Highlands youth workers, and I'm really grateful. I would love to say it's my idea. It isn't. I have to give them full credit for it. I think it's a wonderful project to enable basically the community to have a large green open space at the heart of the community. There is still substantial work to be done. We have to investigate the site because there may well be builders' rubble underneath, but they're very ambitious in the sense that they want it to be at the heart of entertaining young people in the future and cool. And I know COVID has been hard on young people. So just to say that that has my enthusiastic support. On the second one on the list, the Malik Play Park, I know the local community workers who have been involved in this, and they worked incredibly hard raising a really substantial sum of money themselves. And this essentially takes them to completion. This allows them to complete the project, and I heartily welcome that. On the issue of the funds towards the young carers, if I could just explain the two parts to that. The first part, which is about the referral process, sounds less interesting, but in actual fact is absolutely essential, because unless they get the referrals, they can't do anything with the young people, the young carers. And the reason for my interest in this is we had a fairly heartrending submission to the Health and Social Work Committee some months ago from the young carers organisations. And there are some young people who've really got very trying circumstances which they have to struggle with. And one of the phrases which stood out for me in the application for this, in the second part, was simply allowing children to be children. And I thought that was a really evocative statement, and I'm really pleased to give that my support. And finally, the other one I wanted to draw attention to was the sums which are being allocated the cool locality plan. As you councillors know, you put me forward to be your local representative, so to speak, on the locality plan. And certainly it's been a long, hard process. And I think that an injection of funds such as this would certainly help us on the way to achieving those goals. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Dennis. Colleagues, any other comments on the list of applications today? I don't see any hands up, in which case, turning to the recommendations, we are asked to consider and agree the proposed allocations of place-based investment funds as follows, and our senior ward manager has taken us through them. Are you happy to approve those today, please?
Happy to approve. Yep. Thanks.
Agreed.
Great. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Dot, for taking us through those. Members, the next item on our agenda is the minutes of the Lochaber Area Committee held on 9th of August 2021, which is circulated for noting. Happy to note those.
Yes.
Noted.
Great, thank you very much. And the members, the final item on our agenda today is item 11. That's place-based investment funds, a funding application. And I think going back to Dot for this one as well again.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. This is based on the previous committee on the 9th of August, where the allocations from the place-based investment fund for the Fort William and Ardnamurchan ward were agreed. And within those allocations, it was agreed to allocate £30,000 to established community groups in the provision of mental health and wellbeing services. Projects which aided recovery from the harms of COVID were to be prioritised. We have now received an application from Lochaber Hope for £15,000. And just turning to paragraph 4.1, the project really aims to support the new connections hub, which was actually referred to in the earlier conversation with the fire service, who already, amongst other partners, use this space a lot. It's the old job centre in Fort William, or just off Fort William High Street. And the hub itself has a wide number of partners, provides a safe space in the community for people to be cared for and to help them sort of move out of lockdown safely back into community, where there are a range of partners who are available to speak to people. They also use it as an opportunity for afternoon teas 2 or 3 days a week. And the funding before you is to help them complete that package for year one of the provision of the hub. Lochaber Hope is very enthusiastically engaging with other funders in terms of the longer term future, but this, as I say, relates specifically to year one. But I think the potential for this hub to continue into both short and medium term is very strong. So the proposal before you is to support the application for £15,000, for which £8,000 of the £27,000 total project cost is already confirmed, and further applications are awaiting an outcome. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dot. Colleagues, any comments on the recommendation paper before us? Excuse me, reading to the right paper. I don't see any hands up for comments or questions. So moving to the recommendation, we're asked to consider and agree a grant of £15,000 to Lochaber Hope to support the New Connections mental health project within the Fort William and Ardnamurchan ward. Are you content to do that today, colleagues?
Yeah, happy to spend Blair's money. Yeah, thanks.
Support.
Thank you very much. Great, thank you very much, colleagues. That concludes our agenda for today. Thank you all indeed for your time, and thank you to those officials who were here today as well. Councillor Henderson, do you want to come in?
I was just going to say thank you very much for chairing, and which is one of your last acts. And as usual, you've done it in your very usual, very professional self. I can assure you that you're being wasted leaving the council. So thanks again for taking us through this.
That's very kind of you to say. I was really hoping for several starred items. I have to say I'm quite disappointed in my colleagues today. But I saw the look of relief on Dot's face as we got to the end of the agenda. Thank you all indeed. Yeah, thank you for those kind words, Alan. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate the chance to go out as my final meeting as chair. Anyway, I'm sure I'll speak to you again during the week, but thank you all again once again, and see you all soon. Thank you.
Okay.
All the best.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Right.